Is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Mackellar.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. It is my great pleasure to rise today to speak in support of this motion moved by my colleague and good friend, the member for Goldstone. 70 years ago, the United Nations unanimously voted to adopt the prevention and punishment of the crime of genocide. Earlier in this parliament, I had cause to return to some historical documents of my parents and grandparents regarding why they left Poland and their time in Eastern Europe. In there was scant documentation, but there was one document from the German government offering reparations for the death of my great-grandparents and my father's aunts and uncles at the hands of the Nazi regime. I can remember saying to the Premier of New South Wales and many others, how could this happen in a civilised nation? And she pointed to me to a phrase that has been mentioned by a number of other speakers that Hitler spoke at the time, which was, who, after all, remembers the Armenians? That is why the crime of genocide is so critical. 70 years on, we are no closer to eradicating this scourge on humanity. It was Raphael Lemkin, a Jewish lawyer from Poland, who coined the term genocide. Raphael says, "I became interested in genocide because it happened so many times. It happened to the Armenians, and after the Armenians, there was a very rough deal at the Versailles Conference because the criminals who were guilty of genocide were not punished." Since 1948, we have seen genocides in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia, and as recently as 2003 in Darfur. Of these, convictions of genocide have been made, but the international community lacks the capacity to enforce those decisions. In some cases, the offenders are brazenly shrugged off these convictions. In my electorate of Mackellar, I'm proud to host one of the largest Armenian communities in the country, which includes Galston College, an Armenian school which I have had the pleasure and privilege of visiting many times. Many of its students, who I recently spoke to, are descendants of survivors of the Armenian genocide. Many are from Syria, who have also gone through a civil war. When the UN was founded in 1945, it set out as its mission the institutionalisation of fundamental and invaluable human rights. This plight should be close to the heart of every Australian, as we recognised our foundational role in the establishment of the United Nations, the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and our facilitation of the Convention I stand in support of now. Australia has always been a strong advocate in the defence of those fundamental rights and freedoms. This is no better encapsulated than in the spirit of the Anzacs at Gallipoli. What our soldiers witnessed only confirmed this, when they saw the unspeakable horrors perpetrated against the indigenous Armenians, Assyrian and Greek Christian minorities of Anatolia. In October, I stood in the House to recognise Anzac prisoners of war who suffered alongside Armenians held captive in desecrated churches. Those Anzacs that rescued Armenian men, women and children against all odds and witnessed the atrocities perpetrated on those people. As I said in my speech then, this act of kindness and sheer belief to not let evil prevail must not go unnoticed. The experience of the Armenians was one of the first, but unfortunately it wasn't the last. As others have mentioned, we still see the world remain silent while genocides are perpetrated. The Armenians to this day struggle against the efforts of a genocidal regime to eradicate their presence in their historic homeland. The Armenians of the Republic of Artsakh have, from the late 80s until today, been in a state of conflict. In Baku, many are subjected to racism, discrimination and marginalisation because of their heritage. This must stop. If history has taught us anything, it is that we must be prepared to speak out against these atrocities, to prevent escalation and to prevent future genocides. That is why I stand to recognise the 70th anniversary of this convention. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide was not conditional. If we are committed to ensuring these acts are never repeated, we must begin with their acknowledgement.
I thank the member for Mackellar.